It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
And welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Breakfast, available on iHeartRadio every morning and also on Spotify and Apple and wherever you get your good podcast from. It is a Wednesday morning, the middle of the working week. It is the 16th for November for 2022, and we've got a very busy podcast coming up. Shortly, we're talking with Jackie Wang there in Sydney about her local turf selling in Ashfield. And we're also this morning going to be finding out about the Metaverse. How much of this do you know about? It's the latest real estate technology. Tim McKibbin is back again, and he's going to tell us a story about Snoop Dogg, who owns some property on the Metaverse, and somebody then decided to pay big to be Snoop Dogg's neighbour. You can just see how this is going to go, because the celebrities will probably trade in this for free to lend their name. So if you wanted to be Brad Pitt's neighbour, you could probably do it. But how much did somebody pay for being Snoop Dogg's neighbour? Well, we'll find out all of that coming up next.
We talk with leading property commentators with analysis, predictions, forecasts, and what's trending every morning from 6:30. It's the Main Centre Forecast with PRD, selling smarter every day.
And let's check on your weather around Australia on this Wednesday morning. First we go to Sydney. Good morning to you. Expecting 1 or 2 showers and a high of 19 degrees. Also expecting some rain in Melbourne today with 14 as your forecast top. Brisbane, the place to be. Blue skies with sunshine, little bit of windy conditions and a high of 31. And in Perth today, also sunshine with blue skies and 32 degrees is your forecast top in Perth today.
It's your weekday real estate breakfast with news, interviews and predictions every morning on the Real Estate Podcast.
Well, one of the characteristics of the property boom during the pandemic has been the way that suburbs around Australia have forever changed. And I really mean forever changed. There's no doubt about it that even those who are fantastic at reading a suburb have been surprised just how quickly some of these suburbs have been transformed into hotly contested properties. And one of those areas we've talked about in the past has been the inner west of Sydney, and in particular Ashfield. And joining us again this morning is Jackie Wang, who knows the area pretty well. And good morning, Jackie. Welcome back to the Real Estate Breakfast.
Good morning, Craig. Thank you for having me again.
Well, last time we spoke, we found out all about Ashfield. How's your 2022 year of selling gone for you there in Ashfield? And perhaps what's been a bit of a standout in the year as you reflect back on it?
I think 2022 has been it's still a very positive year for us. We still done a lot of transactions throughout the year. But during, let's say, mid-year, there are a couple of months that's very, very hard to secure a deal. It takes longer to sell a property. Towards the end of the year, I think it's moving quicker than June, July or May, April. Sometimes you just need to fail a couple of times on a property before you secure a real one.
Yeah, so patience really, eh? You just need to have forever patience sometimes in this market.
Yes, buyers are more delicate, so you need to deal with them very carefully. And sometimes the approach that we take with previous buyers are not going to work in today's market.
Yes, delicate is a good way of analysing that. Now, I'm asking everybody, Jackie, about the block and a little bit of the fiasco with the auctions that came about. Did you watch it? Did you see what was happening?
Yes, I watched the finale. It was shocking result. House number 5 did really, really well, secure that 5.6666.66 figure. That's really interesting to watch. But I feel sorry for the rest of the houses. They're all amazing. I hope them all get good deals.
Yeah, incredible. And perhaps I wonder where the Chinese buyers were, because there are plenty of affluent Chinese that would probably love to take up residence there in Gisborne.
I want to ask the same question too. Those amazing house looks like it's really appealing to those wealthy Chinese families to have it as a second family or holiday house or something like that.
So what's a couple of areas of concern for buyers that you're dealing with there in Ashfield as they get their money together for purchasing? What seems to be the common roadblock or a bit of a problem that buyers are facing right now that you're experiencing?
Well, I think the biggest talk is still the interest rate. I mean, it's going up every month. A lot of people tend to kind of wait until it's stabilized. A lot of people are thinking, next year the property price is going to go down for another 10-20%. So there's no rush to buy anything at this point of time. The other common things we think is there's a shortage of stock. Yeah, so some of the reasonably nice properties gets really stand out and getting really big money.
And Jackie, last time we spoke, we talked about the Ashfield gentrification because the area really has gone through that. I'm just curious about what, since we last spoke, has happened, particularly with people buying into the area for that very reason.
We actually saw lots of downsizers and start to explore Ashfield as their home. So last time we sold a couple of ground floor units, of course, prestige ones with large courtyard and then, offers lifestyle to people who sold their mansion in Hunters Hill, Ulara. They might use the money to buy a small property in Ashfield and also buy a large farm or large mansion in some of the coastal cities. So use Ashfield as their Sydney-based home. So it's very interesting. It's kind of helping pushing up the prestige property price in Ashfield.
Wow, that is so interesting. I haven't heard of that before. So somebody living in a Wallara has sold up, they've bought their home to live in while they're in Sydney, they're in Ashfield, and they've got a second property, you're saying, and they've gone to a regional area.
Correct. I think that's the pattern. So sell their mansion in Sydney, prestige suburbs, and buy a smaller home, which they want to explore or they want to live for the rest of their life, and also spending more times in a farm or in a coastal home.
You're saying that that's a little bit of a trend, so you've dealt with a couple of people. What about some of the other people that you're dealing with there in Ashfield in the office? Is that, are they picking up these types of people that are sort of downsizing?
There are downsizers, but majority of them could be from the inner west area because they live in the area already. It could be from Five Dog, Russell Lee, or sometimes more inner city areas. Yeah, I think me seems to be the only one that's picking up those nice buyers. Lucky.
Sounds like a plane is about to land in Ashfield. It's gone now. It was a big truck. And just finally there, Jackie, we're eyeing up the end of the year. How are you looking as we wind it down?
We're getting to the end of the year. We're still having a lot of properties going to auctions or about to sell. I think next year would be probably a bit tough in the first few months, but still very positive. The volumes of the transaction will probably be similar to this year or probably a bit more than this year. So we're prepared for a busy year.
All right. Well, thanks for coming back on to the Real Estate Breakfast this morning, and all the best of luck for the rest of this year and into the new year.
Thank you so much, Craig. Lovely chatting with you again.
Well, right now, let's go to Tim McKibbin, the Chief Executive of the Real Estate Institute of New South Wales. A very good morning to you, Tim. Welcome back to the Real Estate Breakfast.
Pleasure to be back with you, Craig.
So, you were talking last time about this road trip, this technology road trip that you went on. So perhaps talk to some of the more interesting things that you found out about.
I, like a lot of other people in our industry now, would have said to ourselves, yes, look, I understand data. We get the sales data, we add it together and divide it by the number of properties. So these sorts of things. And but little did I know just how naive I was in that space. The data that is gathered now in the US at least, and it's certainly coming here into Australia. And what happens now is that if a person comes in and says that they would like to rent a property, well, of course, we ask questions like, what was your last property that you were at, so we can go and do our due diligence there and your income and all the rest of it. But the algorithms then dig very, very deeply into all of the available data out there, and they're taking into consideration things that you would think are just not important. Now, one of the ones that I looked at and said, well, why would that be important? But if you apply for a rental, let's say on a Tuesday, then they look at the salary that you earn, the industry that you work in, the area that you're going to be living in, and of course, then they say, well, how many people default on their rent, and how many people would damage the property that applied for that property on a Tuesday. These are the sorts of things that the algorithm is out there doing, and the AI, as they like to call it, the artificial intelligence, which is constantly looking at the algorithm. And then there was another one, geofencing. You are able now to go along and set up a what's called a geofence around a property. So let's say you have an open and I have an open, and they are similar properties. So I would go to your open and I'd walk around the boundaries of it and set up a geofence. So obviously you can't see it; it's just electronic. Then everybody who comes to your open walks through and that geofence, I would get their telephone contact details, and I would be able to send all of those people the opportunity to participate in the competition to buy my property that I've got listed. Now, because we can do it, Craig, I wonder whether we should be doing it.
And just how big was the show? Because it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. So in America, I mean, it's got to be pretty ginormous, I would imagine.
It was. There was, I think it was about 7,000 or 8,000 people at the conference. It was quite interesting. I'll tell you one more thing. I've got massive question marks sitting around. You would have heard of the Metaverse. So that's where, the gamers have been in there for quite a while, where you sit in your chair and you put your 3D headset on and away you go, living in the Metaverse. Well, they're now getting property in the Metaverse, and there is a gentleman by the name of Snoop Dogg. I think he's a rapper. Yep. Well, he bought a property in the Metaverse, and somebody bought the property alongside of Snoop Dogg and paid $1.2 million for the property. That's another space, so to speak, that it has a value to some people. It's a thing, and people are trading it. That is something that, from the position I sit in, that having to stay up to date with that is something of a challenge. I don't know where that's going to go, but I do know that it's got a foothold.
Wow, yeah, you can't really kick off your slippers and, just relax in your house, though, if it's the Metaverse. And we know that Snoop Dogg's a little bit alternative, but it is something that is growing for sure. Well, that's an interesting one. So thanks again for coming on to the Real Estate Podcast this morning, Tim. We will watch that space with a lot of interest.
Thank you, Craig. Always a pleasure to be with you.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.